Now, more stories, insights, and analysis of Illinois policy and politics. This is Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Policy Institute. Once again, your host, AM 560's Dan Proft.
Dan Proft back with John Tillman, President and CEO of the Illinois Policy Institute. And John, we're just having a discussion with Scott Reeder from Illinois News Network about these statements that Christine Radogno, the Senate Republican leader, made this week. And I got to say, boy, if Republicans went along with a re-increase of the state income tax after Governor Rauner's promising to get it back down to pre-Quinn levels by the end of his first term, or initiating a new structural tax taxing retirement income, one of the few advantages in terms of tax environment that Illinois enjoys over most of the rest of the country, wouldn't that be catastrophic? Wouldn't that be, frankly, a betrayal of the shake-up Springfield culture?
That's totally business as usual. Let's just find another category we don't presently tax, or take a current category and raise the rate, rather than try to stick to our guns for beneficial reforms that will create beneficial revenue growth by economic growth.
Well, and why not take the position that Rauner has taken? Look, if you're not willing to meet me halfway or even a third of the way in terms of some of these structural reforms to make Illinois a more attractive place to live and work, then you've got supermajorities. Go pass your tax increases. Why not to take the same posture if you're a legislative leader, Republican legislative leader, that Bruce Rauner has taken?
Well, they should be doing that. And the other thing that I think is interesting about the retirement income, which is one of the few benefits of our tax code, is we don't benefit or tax people's retirement benefits. So just because everybody else does, let's do what everybody else does, right? That's always a great thing. But here's the deal. One person leaves every 7 minutes. So let's encourage the people that are staying who are older and retired to take their wealth and income and go back down to Florida or Texas, where there's no income tax at all on anybody, including retirees. So it's just bizarre logic in terms of negotiating leverage and a posture of the human condition and how people respond to incentives.
And it's interesting, too, because this segues nicely to a survey that Illinois Policy Institute conducted this week, or commissioned this week.
Illinois Policy Action, to be clear.
Illinois Policy Action commissioned this week. It was done by Ogden and Fry, which is an automated polling firm in Chicago. Just a little aside, Ogden and Fry, I think the only polling firm that had the mayoral race this past spring dead on. So a pretty good firm. Finds people not ecstatic in Illinois about the performance of the Illinois General Assembly. Do you approve or disapprove of the job performance of the Illinois General Assembly? 10% approve, 70% disapprove. Do you approve or disapprove of the way Speaker Madigan is handling his job? 20% approve, 57% don't approve. So against that backdrop, why would you be trying to do, if you're Radogno or Durkin, why would you be trying to do the work of those that are in charge of supermajorities in the General Assembly? The people have weighed in on those individuals, and they're not particularly enthralled.
Right, and I think what's so interesting about those numbers, both Speaker Madigan's numbers and the broad number of the General Assembly, a lot of people always say, well, yeah, everybody says, I don't like Congress, but I really love my congressman. I don't like my school. I think it's not performing well, but I really love my children's teachers. This is different than that. 10% as a body, and the number that you read off for Madigan there, these are unprecedentedly low. And these are also a precursor to what happens in a wave elections when people are discontented with the status quo. This is the kind of numbers we saw across the body politic in 2006 and 8 when voters threw out Republicans in Congress and obviously took over the White House for Democrats. And then we saw it again in 2010 when those same body of voters threw out Democrats in Congress, and again in 2014 in the Senate.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it reminds me of 1996, actually, when after the 94 revolution, Gingrich had become unpopular because of his own kind of excesses and arrogance. And what Madigan did to take back the House, remember 94 to 96, this, of course, was that 2-year interregnum in the last 30.
The darkest days of Madigan's career, as far as he's concerned.
Where he was actually in the minority. And I was running a state rep race in the south suburbs. This was the Punch 10 campaign. This is when Jack O'Malley, popular Republican Cook County State's attorney, lost, and the south suburbs were swept out of all of their Republicans. And it was what Madigan did was to nationalize these legislative races. Everybody was tied to Newt Gingrich. He or she is a Newt Gingrich Republican, and they're part of this, kind of arrogance, ruling class mentality, mean-spirited, extremist, all the usual Democrat descriptors. But it's interesting how it seems that it's been effective in Illinois nationalizing a local race, but it's been difficult to localize a local race. In other words, to take Madigan and connect him to his rank and file members, particularly in the suburbs, that are otherwise personally popular or unoffensive to their constituents, but nevertheless do the bidding of Madigan. We haven't. He could tie all the Republicans to Newt Gingrich, but we haven't been able to tie Democrats to Mike Madigan.
And I've thought a lot about that, and we've all, you and I have had this debate, and many of us who are in this little arena have this debate. And I think one of the reasons that what you just said is true is because we don't have stick-to-itiveness. One of the things I'll say about the left is once they develop a meme, they beat the living heck out of it and do it relentlessly until they get what they want.
Yeah.
You think about the narrative that the former Speaker Pelosi had for years about George Bush. She wasn't polite to George Bush. She called him every name under the sun from the podium in her press conferences. That's what Democrats do to label Republicans. Republicans get squeamish. People on the right try something, and if we don't get Speaker Madigan in 2000, 2002, 2004, which they weren't trying to do, but now there's this development of trying to tie Madigan to the local rep races. And if it doesn't work right away, people give it up because it didn't work in one cycle. It does take an aggregation over time for these things to have effect. And my point is, I think that polling number that you talked about a moment ago gives us an indication that it is starting to take effect, and if it's properly done, can work.
Yeah, and I mean, and just the fact, not just the fact that his number is so upside down, the fact that 77% of the Illinois electorate have an opinion about him. So I know who he is, and by almost a 3-1 margin, I don't like him. So that's a real opportunity for the Republicans this cycle.
And they like him less in Cook County, where they know him best. That should tell us something.
To know Mike Madigan is to loathe him. That makes sense to me.